let's get you all the latest from Sri Lanka, where there have been intense protests today in Colombo. Protesters demonstrating in front of the Prime Minister's office. The police fired several volleys of tear gas on protesters, many of whom are gathered outside the gates of the Prime Minister's office in Colombo. There you can see a huge deployment of security. In fact, that's been something that we've seen today. There's been a huge deployment of security to ward off the protesters who were marching on the Prime Minister's office from the old Parliament building. This is after Gotabaya Rajapaksa, the President of Sri Lanka, fled the country at around midnight. He is in the Maldives, and after that, the Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, he took over as the acting president, and he declared a state of emergency. So take a look at these visuals coming outside of the Prime Minister's office there, where the security, they're forming a wall really to prevent the protesters from coming forward. Tear gas also used against the protesters, and the protesters who've been parked in Colombo in the president's residential palace, upset now with Ranil Wickremesinghe taking charge. They say they want him to go. And so protesters very angry, marching to the office there. There you can see how tear gas was used against protesters who threw, there was stone pelting. Protesters also threw bottles on the security forces. But today, security forces out in a huge number to prevent the protesters from marching on into the Prime Minister's office. In fact, some of the news that we can get you is that it's being reported that Sri Lanka's national television broadcast has been suspended. There's a state of emergency, and the broadcast suspended. There's some reports that engineers shut the channel down as protesters have entered the office there as well. So a lot of anger there on the streets of Colombo. Protesters had marched on the presidential palace on Saturday. They overran the palace that day, and the president, in fact, had left the night before. He last night at midnight, he fled from Sri Lanka and is in the Maldives now. So for the last 5 days, you've had these protesters, camping out in the president's official residence, at the Prime Minister's official residence. There have been quite unprecedented scenes seen there as they all enjoyed themselves inside the presidential palace. But today was where it was all building up to, because today on the 13th was the day that the President and Prime Minister were to step down. The protesters demanding that the Prime Minister also step down. However, last night he fled. There you can see constant tear gas shelling being done to disperse that angry crowd. You can see the police there and anti-riot gear standing by to ward off the protesters. In fact, they're advancing towards the protesters. The protesters there outside the office of the Prime Minister. The security forces are marching